Hi, everyone. Happy Friday, and thanks for joining us for another exciting AdvisorShares AlphaNooner. Always great to have you with us. Today, we are very, very excited to welcome back Christian Angermayer, founder of Atai Life Sciences, for an always interesting conversation on the world of psychedelics, as well as share some interesting highlights for Atai specifically. It's been a great year for Atai, some really interesting things to kind of talk through in terms of highlights. So we'll talk through it all, but a good reminder, if you're out there and joining us, one, really appreciate it, especially on a Friday. Two, if you have any questions or comments, you're welcome to put them in as we go. We've definitely gotten a lot more interest and feedback in terms of wanting education and insight around sort of the psychedelics theme. So take advantage of this time. Christian has a lot of great thoughts and interesting insights. So with all that out of the way, Christian, thanks for joining us again. Really appreciate it, especially again on a Friday as well. And it's late for where you are too.
I always enjoy it. And actually, like I remember last time, the questions were really good. So let's make sure we have enough time for them, because I always want to, I have my talking points, so to say, but I'm always very interested to get feedback.
Yeah.
Where do people want more knowledge? Let's do a lot of the questions.
Yep, that sounds good. Well, again, if you have questions out there, put them in. We'll try to get to them early. We're going to try to keep the show roughly around 30 minutes. So try to get them in as early as possible so we can get them answered. So if you're out there.
Ask anything, whatever you want to know.
No, it's good. So then I know every time you're on, normally we tend to go through your background, how you kind of found your way to psychedelics and how you kind of had realized the use for mental health and how that ultimately ended up in you trying to share that through Atai. So we can skip over that because I know that's important, but I know you've shared that quite a ton now. So I'd like to kind of start with kind of where we are, like the current state of psychedelics, the temperature check, because things have changed quite a bit since you tried psychedelics yourself, before founding Atai, all of that as well. So I'd love to start with sort of high level where we are in the psychedelic space, and then we'll kind of move through because I know some great highlights to share later for Atai.
Cool. No, if you want to, since I've tried it myself for the first time, this is now literally 11 years.
Oh my God.
It's unbelievable how the world has changed. I actually just had it in a discussion with a business partner, and I told him the first time actually, or it was an introductory call about psychedelics, but he was like, "Yeah, great! Like all my friends are doing it." Like, and I was like, "Wow!" Like this always reminds me how much that all has changed over the last 10 years, or 11 years since I tried it the first time, because back then, completely stigmatized, completely sort of, you can't talk about it. And now it's sort of, at least in the perception already, fully arrived sort of in society. And let's go to Atai and Compass. We're getting very close to approval. Like Compass is first in line, where Atai still has a strategic stake. My guess is that psilocybin, sort of the compound of Compass, will be approved. They already finished phase 3. They released phase 3 results, at least parts of it. It's going to be approved end of next year. So hopefully then early 2027, the latest, really patients in the US and then Europe hopefully follow soon, can go to their doctor. So reminder for everybody who's hearing it for the first time, we don't want to make these substances legal. It's not cannabis. We want to make them medically available. So we want to make them legal, but not consumer legal or not everywhere. It's not that I want them to be sold in every mom and pop shop. It's not cannabis. I think it's the very wrong way. Yeah, I believe these are very powerful substances with enormous therapeutic potential who should be administered with a doctor together. So not only prescription drugs, but you go to a doctor, hopefully in the future, do the therapy with them, and then you go home. Anyway, so Compass, psilocybin, first in line, but then there is Atai has several more late-stage psychedelic drugs. First and foremost, our, I think, coolest and most advanced one is 5-MeO-DMT, where we had great phase 2b data, moving forward to a phase 3 now. So which I would hope is hopefully in the stores, not in the stores, but with the doctors, like in 2029.
Wow, that's a lot to cover. I will say it does feel like I was reading your Substack post that you put out recently, which I think does a great job of kind of breaking down where we are, some of the benefits within Atai itself. But the quote that stood out was sort of saying psychedelics isn't, in the future, they're the present. I think that feels very true, just kind of, hearing what you're saying in terms of where things are coming along and moving along. I think really interesting to focus in, of course, on the medical side exclusively, because you're right. I think when people talk about psychedelics, that can encompass quite a large, scale of things, even when you're just talking about the therapeutic element, because I know there is recreational. I know there is, kind of spiritual elements as well. But I think, having it through a medical purpose and sort of a therapeutic purpose that is very regulated, sort of standardized, has, real strong control and research, I think makes a difference in terms of having the correct experiences with these, I think, strong substances, ultimately, impactful substances.
Yeah. And by the way, I want to say, because at this point, I know I have said it before, but some people might say, oh, isn't Christian a hypocrite? Because obviously I'm doing it myself now. I would say very spiritually, but you still could call it recreationally because it is not available medically yet. I'm doing it in countries where it's legal. So it's not, so practically the good news is, or sort of already today, there are several countries, practically entire South America, where psychedelic compounds are just not recognized. They're neither legal nor illegal. It's like they're just part of the tradition. So important fact, so I'm not doing it in the US. But like still people say, oh, why do so? And my answer is, by the way, twofold. The one is like, actually from a very spiritual side, if you look into human history, actually all societies, all cultures where we know they use psychedelics have actually used them in a very structured, in a very regulated framework. So most of them came to the conclusion, don't do it more than once or twice a year. They always said you have to do it with a priest together or a shamans, and the priests of today are the therapists. And sometimes it was actually even forbidden by death to do it outside sort of these very regulated things. So psychedelics were never a recreational party drug, and I don't think should not be. So that is the one thing, and then the other one is also like it's still very few people who actually would say, oh, I do it spiritually with a shaman, whatever. We maybe have the feeling, because a lot of people who sort of at the moment sort of look at or are familiar with psychedelics coming out of that group, so including myself. But then at the end, what we're trying to do at Atai is we're trying to cure depression, anxiety, addiction from other drugs like post-traumatic stress disorder. And unfortunately, in the Western world, more than 1 billion people are diagnosed with one or more of these very terrible mental health issues. But most of them are people in, I don't know, in Iowa, whatever, and they don't want to go, even if they could, they don't want to go to a shaman, whatever. They have a medical condition. It's not like, luckily, like I can say that about myself, like I do it for sort of expanding my horizons, learning more about myself. But I think we all have to acknowledge, and that's very important, people who really need it, first and foremost, are the patients who suffer from something, and they actually want it from their doctor whom they trust, and most importantly, they want it to be paid by the healthcare insurer. And that all of that is only possible if we treat it strictly as a medical drug. I'm always adding, just because we own these substances medically, we have all the patents and IP, does not mean that I'm going to knock on the door and say, oh, you have been in Mexico, now pay me. That is a completely different world, which, by the way, I cherish, but it's a very small group of people, like, and they shall go on. And actually, I think we are giving their beliefs and their sort of spiritual use actually even more credibility, because we're showing, look, they are right. And actually, a lot of shamans tell me that they get more positive recognition because of our work, and I'm very happy about that. So just want to mention that, because sometimes people try to talk that up as if sort of my medical view or my very strong view that this should be only medicalized is kind of conflicting with the shamanistic tradition. I don't think it does at all. We're actually deeply sort of supporting each other.
That's really interesting. I do think either way, whichever way you're kind of taking it from, just in terms of psychedelics broadly, I think there is so much education, so much understanding that is still required, whichever way you're kind of taking it. And I think, having somebody like you who I think is able to really articulate well in a way that makes sense to your average person, I think makes a big difference in terms of understanding how they can be used, the benefits, all those things as well. Just because I think it is difficult for the average person, even now. I know, 11 years ago, much harder. But I think even now there's still a gap in terms of knowledge and really understanding the opportunities ahead there. So interesting. I am seeing some good questions. And I know you wanted to get to questions. So I want to jump in there early while we're getting through. Let me see if I can pull some of these up really quickly. All right. First from Shroom Sleep. Howdy, Christian. Well, everyone is excited about BL003 and everyone really so. Can you tell us a little bit about what else Atai has in the pipeline? You mentioned very briefly DMT, but.
So I love the...
Isn't it great?
The picture. Yeah. And also, by the way, thank you. Shroom Sleep is very active on Twitter, very supportive. I love it. I read all of it. Like, No, and I always, by side note, I think it's very important. Like, I love all of our investors from the big funds who just came in. We just raised 150 million with all the big biotech funds to the retail investors, because they all, the good thing is I have the feeling, even actually from the institutional investors who came in, everybody wants to make money who is in stocks, and rightly so. I'm a deep capitalist, and again, I don't think that's at odds with each other. But I think really, like, my feeling is all of the investors from the big institutions to the retail one, they have the feeling, or they also do it because of they believe in the mission and what we're doing. So to our pipeline, so as indeed BPL-003, which is 5-MeO-DMT intranasal, is our lead drug, but shortly after already comes a VLS-01, which is DMT, which is buccal administration. And then again, shortly after, I mean, in sort of the development stage, comes R-MDMA, EMP-01, which is a novel or a sub version, but better version, or we hope it's better, of MDMA. So these are our three most advanced drugs. Then we have the stake in Compass, and then we have a little bit earlier our ibogaine program, which is ibogaine is a very strong psychedelic, which especially works well, or has the potential with addiction. So these are our sort of five, like BPL-003, 5-MeO-DMT, DMT, and R-MDMA as sort of the three most important one in the pipeline. Then a little bit earlier stage ibogaine, and the minority stake in Compass. And then, and maybe not today because we want to say more soon, but like, we have a very strong discovery pipeline where we're looking at novel psychedelics, but also, and we need a new word for it, because I don't think they are then, or it's not the right term, psychedelics, because people call sometimes they say like non-hallucinogenic psychedelics. I think it's sort of, the words don't fit, because psychedelics are per se, I think, hallucinogenic. But like, what we mean is that psychedelics have these two effects. The one is the trip, the deep spiritual one, which I think is the part necessary for mental health issues. But then there is the second effect, which at the moment we're only observing because it's also very good, but we believe it's not the main factor for mental health, but it's neuroplasticity. But I deeply believe that neuroplasticity effect can be can be the main positive mechanism of action to help with, or maybe even prevent, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, dementia, whatsoever. And I want to do more in that. But that's very early stage. But again, we need our pipeline, because for me, that's a very sort of long-term game. But let me maybe say, because like, it's a good moment to highlight valuations, because like, there was only one so far private M&A transaction, which is sort of fairly comparable to the business model of Atai. Namely, AbbVie bought a company called Gilgamesh, which has a phase 2A finished psychedelic, which means that is behind our 5-MeO-DMT, which is phase 2B. And I would say, if I look at it, they need another phase 2B, because it was a very small phase 2A. That means this Gilgamesh drug is around about, I would say, 2 year-ish behind our lead drug. Yeah. Second, and this, I also want to make people alert what I as an investor would look out for. The way of administration is super important, because it decides how many healthcare providers can use you. And in America, surprisingly, the number of healthcare providers who are allowed to use IV is very little. So that's why we're focusing with all of our therapeutics on either oral, which is Compass, or intranasal, which is super easy, which is 5-MeO, or buccal, which is DMT. That Gilgamesh drug is IV. So you have practically a drug which is 2 years behind our 5-MeO-DMT, and has a much smaller target group because it's IV only. And we paid 1.2 billion. So practically, my point is like, if you look, definitely, I wouldn't find any other reason why not. 5-MeO-DMT, BPL-003 should be actually worth much more than that. Further advanced, much broader market, because better route of administration. Our DMT program is roughly the same in terms of in terms of timeline, but also better in terms of administration, because DMT is buccal. Yeah, and then we have RMDMA, and then we have ibogaine, and. So you can easily make, if you have these and they actually paid 1.2 billion. I don't know if I said it already, for Gilgamesh. So you can easily make your sum of the parts, which should be much more than 1.2 billion.
Yeah, really. I feel like a really robust lineup of what's out there. It is a little depressing, I think, how much is bounded by just sort of the American healthcare system. It's great to, of course, pay attention and be, sensitive to that and adjust for it. But that is a bit depressing. But that's okay. You got to live in the world you live in.
I always say, since I'm in biotech, I was like, you have two choices. I could either fight the system or at least try to do my best within the given framework. Yeah. Yes. And would I structure the American? I'm not American. I look at it and was like, would I structure the American healthcare system differently? For sure. Yeah. It's not my fight to fight.
It's also possible that it changes. I feel like the new administration, I think, has kind of warmed up to these types of drugs and treatments. So maybe things change eventually. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think taking it on in one go is a lot harder than kind of finding the best solutions in the current setup. So I think that totally makes sense.
If I may fill in there, because one thing, by the way, and that for me could be the decisive factor if Atai in 2 years, 3 years from now is a $10 billion company, what I hope, or at least, or it's a $20 billion company, is like the current administration. So I'm very, very positive on them. They have a strong focus on prevention. And by the way, very simplified said, it's actually so sad that we have to say that, or to make a point out of it, for almost every disease out there, for mental health, but for cardiovascular, for cancer, it's better to not get it at all than to have a cure when you get it. Because obviously, once you have it, not everybody gets cured, but even the people who are actually cured, or for at least some time, like if you look at, for example, cancer, the likelihood that you get it again is much higher once you had it. The same, by the way, unfortunately, for mental health. Even if we can sort of put people in remission, the likelihood that once you had depression, at least you're more prone to relapse. So I love that focus on prevention. But why I'm saying that is that if you look at all the analysts' models, and like the price target, I wrote it in my blog post, I think are going up to $16 at the moment, but they all are very narrowly modeling our market only for treatment-resistant depression, because that is the indication indeed we're using to approve it for. But like treatment-resistant depression is sort of the worst kind of depression. Why are we doing that, by the way, is because this is where you can super easily show it. Okay, if somebody is really treatment-resistant depression, it means very bad, tried everything, nothing helps. And then, for example, 5-MeO DMT comes, and the majority of people gets much better. Yeah, so it's a great, don't want to sound something about it, it's a great sort of group of people to show the power of psychedelics in a quick way. But like, I believe actually, but that's, everybody's taking that at face value and saying, oh, then I model your market only for treatment-resistant depression. And by the way, and then still they come to a price target of 16. While I'm saying, wait a moment, once these substances are approved, I know so many doctors out there who are like, once you're approved, why should I wait and give my patient all the bad stuff? Because by the way, it's the one thing is about the efficacy, but the other thing is about the gentle side effect profile of psychedelics and the horrible side effect profile of most other mental health stuff. So all these therapists are like, why should I give my patients the bad stuff first, only to someone come to you anyway? So definitely, I believe once psychedelics are approved, they're going to be a first in line treatment, which is already a multifold bigger market than anybody anticipates. But I go one step further. And again, I'm very supportive in that way by the current government, is like, why would you wait till you get depression? And by the way, humans are way smarter than the system makes it, or a lot of politicians think. Like, we all feel when we go through a bad time. Yeah. And we all have it, by the way. I always say it's part of being human. Being human is complicated. Like, and there are these moments, could be a bad time in job, could be like going through whatever relationship issues, you lose somebody you love. Why not going to therapy early and saying, look, I'm going through a problematic time, and I know psychedelics can help me cope better. And by that, I'm avoiding becoming depressive or whatever in the first place. If that is actually the treatment paradigm in, like, I would say some years after approval, it always takes a bit, then we have practically the whole population as our target group. And that is, I think, what makes Atai in the next 5+ years, or can make us a 20, 30, 40, $50 billion company.
Yeah, really interesting. I do think, even preventing, I know you were saying with some of these things that if you don't treat them early, you might have them come back again, but even having knock-on effects, if you're really depressed and you run up a credit card bill because you can't leave the house or, whatever, I think you avoid those things as well. And then, like you're saying, if you're using kind of more traditional pharmaceuticals or having to go through those before you're allowed to get into psychedelics, I know a lot of those take a long time to kind of take effect and trial through, which might not be time that people have. And also, I think they do have a lot of ill side effects, like I know suicidality increases. All those things can be really painful and make a negative impact. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm seeing some great questions come in. Let me see if I can whip through them because I know we're trying to get in the mix. Let's see. All right, let's see. From Frederick, is there really no place for 6 to 8 hour psychedelics in the market? They can't be profitable for treatments needed are, if treatments needed are few and far apart and the clinics can get paid for them.
No, so what I'm to explain the background of the question. So what I'm stressing a lot in all of my blog posts is that in the medical system, treatment duration matters a lot for two reasons. The one is the obvious one, like you need a therapist with you. That costs money. So the longer a session takes, sort of the more pricey it will be. So, by the way, the background of the question for mobile is like, because our phase 2b data for 5-MeO-DMT have shown similar, if not superior, outcomes than, for example, psilocybin, which has a 6-hour duration. So I'm making the point is that I think commercially, actually these shorter acting psychedelics, which is actually the only ones I see in the market is our 5-MeO and our DMT, will be much more commercially successful. Full stop. However, obviously, it's never 100%. And I also think, let me say that sort of more positive. I think what we kind of all doing, not a mistake. Again, we're just following the system, but the system, the healthcare system, sort of orders issues like according to their expression. So we say somebody is depressive, somebody has PTSD, whatever. But like what we really should ask is what's the root pathology of the expression? And then actually, by the way, therapists are doing that already now. Yeah. So most of them would say, look, you order it wrong, because we should rather order it and say, oh, this is the group of people who has trauma. This is the group who has existential fear, whatever. And sometimes you might have more of them. And the interesting thing is that if you order it that way, again, and I'm not speaking now as kind of from Atai's perspective, because Atai is very like, we have to do it in the current system. I'm speaking as Christian, who has talked to a lot of therapists. They will tell you once these psychedelics are on the market, we need all of them. That's also the reason why, by the way, we are not just doing one of them and saying, oh, 5-MeO is the best, let's only do that. Yeah, I want the whole range of psychedelics to be approved so that the therapists, with all their knowledge they have about the patient, the individual one, and their sort of rich experience, can actually decide or make an educated guess what is the best psychedelic for the respective patient. And those therapists, again, and some of them already do it underground, have experience, will tell you there is a difference. And sometimes psilocybin is the right thing, sometimes 5-MeO. There will still be the commercial question as well. And the commercial answer will always be the shorter, the better. Yeah, but I think there is a place actually for psilocybin. What I honestly, personally don't see, because I just don't see how, is like, can there be a place for LSD, which is a 14-hour trip? Because very practically, that is even exceeding a full day shift. So you already need, and I think people need to, but I want to, again, I always try to explain it like, how should people look at psychedelics in general? Yeah. And again, someone needs to pay it. Yeah. But like, there also needs to be the workflow. We have the huge advantage with Atai that both 5-MeO-DMT and DMT fall in exactly this Spravato window. So one of the reasons why the Atai share is going so up, because Spravato, which is a Johnson & Johnson drug, is going through the roof. Yeah, and they are a 2-hour treatment. By the way, much less efficacious because you need 8 treatments for what we achieve in 1. Yeah, but still they paving the way so doctors are familiar with it whatsoever. So again, so Compass, I can see that a doctor says, you know what, like it's the same thing, just like 6 hours, but like 12, 14 hours, you need a new shift because the doctor wants to go home. Yeah. What is if the trip is even longer, which sometimes can be? Are these patients then sleeping there? That immediately changes because most clinics have not that option. So in the moment you only have to be prepared for an overnight stay, practically 95% most likely of all clinics can't offer it. And. So that are sort of the, and by the way, it's good that I tell you that because that means that shows we are already fully in rollout mode. Yeah. So for me, the approval of psilocybin, of Compass, and then of our drugs is kind of a, I still have to say there are risks associated. My lawyer will text me in a second.
Of course.
But like positively said, and I said that, by the way, from the beginning, we know these drugs work. And if we get it right in terms of execution, they will be approved. And we are there. So a big part of my mind is already, look, this is going to be approved. How do we roll them out? What are the commercial things? Who's going to use it? What's my sales force? Whatever. So very positively, I'm already in that mode. But then you think about these things, and then I can tell you the vast majority of the market share will be Atai with short-acting psychedelics. And we have the patents, we have the IP. I cannot see anybody else doing that.
That's fantastic. I think, yeah, being in the ready position for the world that we are in now, makes the most sense to be able to kind of unlock the potential immediately. It is interesting, just kind of with your background and range of interest. I do wonder if, I don't know if it'd be popular or not, but AI gets in the mix in terms of later for those longer trips. Again, I don't know if that's, people don't like it. I don't know, but.
It's exactly in the middle. Like, I think for the session, you need a human being.
Yeah,
by the way, and you're going to need a human being because the FDA will tell you that. So there is maybe 10 years away, maybe, but like there will be a human being. And I think it's the right thing that there is a human being in the session itself. However, where AI can be greatly helpful is in pre and post session and pre-treatment and post-treatment sort of improvement. Yeah. While we are only testing these substances with no therapy. Yeah. And this is another big topic people discuss. I said, look, it's the right thing to test it with no therapy because as a scientist, you always want to know what the drug is doing in itself. But obviously, I can tell you, like, I don't need to do a study for that. If you do additional therapy before or after, the results will be even better. By the way, I could go on for 10 minutes why I believe psychedelics are one of the rare group of drugs where the real life effects are going to be much, much better than sort of the lab effects. Yeah. And adjunct therapy, which people have to do themselves or book themselves or whatever, but is one thing. It's the same like with chemotherapy. If you do chemo, there is an effect. But if you change your lifestyle, if you go training, whatever, it's going to be even better. So, and for example, for the therapy part, AI can play a major role.
Yeah, all very interesting. Okay, I know this has been a fantastic conversation. I know we've got a limited time, so I want to make sure we're packing in sort of the last final bit.
You go
okay,
as long
I just want to make sure. Okay, make sure I'm hitting your time because I don't know if you've eaten yet, haven't eaten yet, all that stuff. Okay, that sounds good. So in terms of the specific highlights for Atai, I think you've highlighted them between the fast tracking designation, which, super important. I think between the, capital raising, especially with the focus on a lot of institutional participation kind of coming in the mix, which I think is probably a positive sign that people are starting to kind of see the opportunities there, which is great. Seems like you guys are, again, well positioned for kind of the future and moving drugs, out, rolling them out as we go. I know you outlined again in your Substack, which I'll retweet it after this just so people can see it and access it. But I think it does a great job of kind of laying out the case for now. I think you did sort of Martin Luther-esque a little bit, 15 reasons why, Atai is set up well and, positioned well ultimately. So I think it's all in a great space. Anything that I'm missing from the conversation in terms of, why people should, I feel like you laid it out, but I mean, 15 reasons is a ton of reasons, which is great.
Yes, I would love if people follow me on my Substack, or I always post the same on LinkedIn and the same on Twitter. So follow me on one of those or subscribe for it would be a pleasure. And some question.
I was going to say this one's a hard one to answer, but I wanted to tie it in terms of like what I know. I know you couldn't even answer.
Look, first of all, by the way, I think especially in biotech, but I think in general in like CEOs and chairmen are sometimes too much thinking about their lawyers. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. Sure. I believe in that. I can give you the disclaimer, but everybody knows, like, I'm the founder. I believe in nothing more than psychedelics. So everybody who's watching, I'm highly biased. Yeah. So, but I've never sold any stock. To the contrary, in almost every capital raise I participated since foundation, I put in 140 million. Again, I'm biased, but I'm biased and aligned with our shareholder. With that disclaimer that I'm biased and that it's my personal opinion, is like I said it before, like I think we can build in the next 10 years, 5 to 10 years actually, 30, 40, $50 billion company out of that, because unfortunately the market is there. I think, by the way, I mentioned that in my blog post as well. I think the number of mental health issues, the clinically diagnosed, and then we have all the prevention, what I said before, but will go through the roof. It's already going through the roof. I always tell people, if you look at a chart, and I would remove what it is, I would remove timelines, but I would just say, look at this chart. Everybody would say it's an infectious disease. No, it's the chart of depression, anxiety, and all of that. We're living in a world which in parts is amazing, and I'm part of building that world with our other investments I have in my family office in tech, whatever. But we need to acknowledge that the world we're building, and AI will make that much, much more dramatic, is not good for our mental health. And let's start with the negative. Unfortunately, and I'm really thinking a lot about that, again, because we're really with many companies I'm a shareholder in, with driving innovation. Yeah, unfortunately, so far, every single time in human history, when there was a very sudden, very sort of steep disruption, technological change, not the end state was bad. So the end state was always amazing, but the transition was always catastrophic, normally accompanied by wars and by other really unrest, because I think literally people are going crazy. We can't handle very quick disruption and change. So, and we're gonna go into the quickest disruption period of all times. So, but for the first time, I deeply believe we have a tool, hopefully ready, which is called psychedelics. And I think it can help us people to really move from sort of literally one era in our lifetime into the next one. If we can do that, then I think we've contributed more to this world, we collectively as Atai shareholders, than anything else I can imagine. But this is also where I believe then we can be a 50 billion plus company, because we really I think we hold the key to global mental sanity.
That's a big key to hold. I think that's great. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting world, an ever-changing and much more rapidly changing world. Definitely agree with those leaps forward. It is always disruptive and causes some problems, I think, along the way. So I do think hopefully being able to tap into that, either to handle the change or even to have your brain kind of be a little bit more flexible to adjust to the change, can make a big difference. All right. Well, again, Christian, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. It's always such a joy to have you on. It's always so interesting. I feel like we didn't go down the bunny trails of side things, but it's great. I think a lot of focus deserves to be in Atai right now. So I would recommend anyone out there, definitely check out Atai, check out the Substacks. I think that's great. Of course, follow Christian on Twitter or X and LinkedIn as well. With all that said, thanks so much.
Coming, so a lot of reasons to check in again very soon.
Very exciting. You're welcome back anytime. Thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it, and enjoy your weekend. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.